Well, we're back, and I am really excited to have back with us today Patrick Morley. You probably have read one of his books, if not perhaps the book that he's best known for, The Man in the Mirror. He's authored over 20 books, and he's considered a men's leader. And he's authored a new book, How God Makes Men, and I'm really excited to talk to him about this today. And hey, Patrick, a few moments ago when you were kind of setting the camera and it kind of zoomed out, I noticed above your head there's a rifle on the wall. All right, man, you're a man.
Well, there's a long story behind that rifle. It's not actually mine. Long story. But
Okay.
anyway.
Nice to have you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So good to be with you.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, you hit the nail on the head again with this book. And, you know, it's interesting because I had this discussion the other day with a Christian counselor, how men are struggling, Christian men are struggling what would be called the authentic Christian life. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, first of all, you know, so when I travel and a stranger learns that I work with men as a vocation, they'll often say something like, you know, that must really be hard. And I always just say, whoops, you got the wrong guy here. We constantly see men coming to Christ, growing in the faith, serve Him. But, you know, with all of that said, we need to do a reality check, too. And so lots of guys are just really confused about what it means to be a man. We live in a culture now that the pop culture ridicules men in general, Christian men in particular, and so a lot of guys are really finding it hard to sustain their faith out in the world. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. You know, you kind of wonder, is the culture feminizing men? I mean, is it's been said that's the case. Men are always put down in the commercials, always put down in the sitcoms, so maybe what a man is supposed to be is just not getting through.
Well, I don't know about that. I do know that the men we work with, they desperately want to get this right. In fact, I've never talked to a man who got up in the morning and said to himself, well, I wonder what I can do today to mess up my life, you know? So, I mean, no man wakes up and says to himself, well, I wonder what I can do today to irritate my wife. Well, actually, you probably do that. But anyway, they don't try to irritate their wives, neglect their kids, let their bosses down, have a moral failure. But a lot of men are doing those things, and they're looking for help. And that's why I wanted to write this book, How God Makes Men, to basically get back to some of these Bible characters. And are these just a bunch of guys with long beards and longer robes riding around on camels that have nothing relevant to say to men today? Or do they have principles that we can actually apply to the problems that we face as men? And, of course, the answer is yes, but a lot of guys don't know exactly how to data mine for those things, and so that's why I wanted to write this book.
All right, you deal with 10 principles, and of course you use a lot of the biblical characters to express that. Why don't you run through those principles?
Okay, so first of all, the characters, the first guy is Abraham,
right.
and no man who ever hears this broadcast or even hears that this broadcast ever took place will ever have his faith tested more than Abraham. And so the principle that is illustrated in that chapter is that God makes men by helping us to understand and have faith even in the most seemingly impossible circumstances. You know the story of Abraham's faith being tested 25 years before he had his son, and then he was tested to give his son up. And so just to show men how Bible time works, how God's time is not like our time at all. And so there's that going on. So that's one. I don't know if you want me just to kind of go through all 10.
Go ahead. Yeah, sure. Take your time.
I'll toss it back and forth as much as you want, of course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the next guy is Joseph. And so no man has ever felt more mistreated than Joseph. So he was caged and sold like an animal by his brothers.
Right.
He was falsely accused of rape. He was imprisoned wrongly. And he didn't know what was going on. It was 22 years later when there was a famine and his brothers came down, and by then he'd been the prime minister of Egypt. And he realized, and he told his brothers, you know, you meant it for evil to harm me, but God meant it for good, for the saving of many lives. And so it's the principle of a greater good. So God makes men by basically orchestrating what seem like impossible circumstances for a greater good. And so to talk through, there are lots of guys who will do this broadcast who feel deeply mistreated and unfairly judged. And so how do you handle that? How do you get through that? Well, God put the story of Joseph in the Bible, so we would be able to figure that out.
Now, there is a thread here, Patrick, and that is that both in Abraham's case and in Joseph's case, there is this relationship they had with God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
And I think a lot of men are trying to have that relationship with God, but how can they affirm that they have that relationship with God? So when they are faced with whether they have to make a decision about a son, or they're being mistreated and misused and sold into slavery, that they know God is there.
Well, Perry, you have to have the right information. So what we discover in the work that we do with men is so many men, it's kind of like they've enlisted and been issued a rifle that they don't know how to clean or shoot. So they're not much good on the day of battle. And so you have to have the right information. And I just stopped my phone. I got it. A little too much animation.
That's all right. We're live. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I get it. So, okay, all my secrets are out. I'm a klutz. But anyway, guys really want to know how to get their lives right. And these 10 men that I picked to mentor them out of the Bible, they're just the perfect guys because, hey, guys, listen to me. If God didn't use flawed men, he wouldn't use any men at all. Mm-hmm. So every one of these guys has funny fellows. Abraham, take Abraham. Abraham, he encouraged his wife to sleep with another man so he could get ahead.
Yeah.
He had a child out of wedlock with his housekeeper, and then he abandoned them financially. And then wants to keep himself from getting mugged, he pretended that his wife was his sister. So this is not exactly the sterling kind of guy that is often presented. Too good to make a mistake. Very real guy, very flawed man. A man really just like us.
Go figure.
Well, hopefully not like me.
Well, what we don't want. Yeah, there you go. What we don't want to misinterpret here, because so often we hear how flawed these guys really were, and yet God used them, that's not an excuse to keep on making mistakes.
God changed their lives. He transformed their lives. Hey, take Moses, for example. So Moses killed a guy because he thought he was going to be the deliverer of his people, and then God drove him into the wilderness for 40 years. After 40 years, he was a much humbler guy, of course. But the point of that was there was too much Moses in Moses. But the principle in that chapter, by the way, is that God makes men by putting us through a humbling process that fundamentally changes the way that we think. And so, as I say, you have to have the right information. And so God is building into our lives the character that we need so that the conduct that we want to have can flow from that. He's also taking some things out of our lives as well. Make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of men are recluse. They don't like the kumbaya like women. They don't go to the bathrooms in coveys. They like to be alone, and yet to come together with other men and to be open and vulnerable just isn't a comfortable thing to do. What can you say to that?
All right, so this is a huge problem because men communicate information. Women communicate to express feelings and emotions, and so I just give me the facts. Mm-hmm. So men do tend toward isolation, as you said, Terry. Here's the problem: anybody that's ever watched the National Geographic Channel knows this is true, and that is that every predator, no predator goes after the herd. The predator always goes after what? The stray.
Right.
Every predator knows the strategic value of isolation. And men, we have a predator on our trail, the devil, and his stated purpose, according to Jesus, is to steal and to kill and to destroy us. And so we do need to be. In fact, I always tell men, if you can only do one thing, study the Word of God for yourself on a regular basis and be in a small group with some other men who are engaged. I guess that's two things, but but being so I'm clumsy and my math is not very good.
All right, let me take a quick break here. When we come back, Patrick, I want you to dig a little deeper, and that is this. A lot of men are under a lot of pressure today, even to the point of maybe breaking. And sometimes that breaking ends up being abuse in the home, which you're well aware of. What can you tell a guy who's just on the edge? He's had enough, can't handle anymore, more is being demanded of him. What should he do? And I'll have you tackle that when we get back. Patrick Morley's with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and just delighted to have back with us today Patrick Morley. Perhaps you have read one of his books, The Man in the Mirror, is one of them, but his latest book is How God Makes Men, 10 Epic Stories, 10 Proven Principles, 1 Huge Promise for Your Life. There's a picture of it on the screen put out by Multnomah Books. Let me encourage you to check it out at Evangel or Christian Discounts Books, or maybe online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Get a copy of it. I'm sure it will be a tremendous resource for you. All right, Patrick, and I understand I got to let you go a little early because you got another interview, but you have now made it on the big time. You're on the Dove.
Life is good.
All right, a man under a lot of pressure, and boy, you're seeing a lot to this. And I know you do a lot of speaking to men. I do as well, and I tell you, some guys are living right on the brink. The culture has really got them squeezed. What do you say to these guys?
Okay, so we do live in a culture that is built around increasingly dysfunctional ideas, cultural ideas. We have a pop culture now that has pretty much abandoned Judeo-Christian values. You know, there used to be this moral consensus of Judeo-Christian values. Now, Christians are a minority and always have been, but we're the biggest minority that we've ever been. Mm-hmm. There are about 100 million of us now in the United States, 1 in 3 roughly. But as a minority, we no longer set the agenda for the values of the culture. And so guys that really are not firmly planted in biblical manhood, more than ever are subject to become let's just call them cultural Christians. Mm-hmm. So the way it happened for me is that I wanted to make a lot of money, and so I caught the disease. Let's call it success sickness, the disease of always wanting more, but then never being happy when you get it. Mm-hmm. And so I like Solomon, and I talk about Solomon in this book. I was pursuing happiness apart from God, every possible earthly avenue to find happiness apart from God. But God is gracious, and He has introduced futility into the creation. Futility is the chief tool by which God sovereignly draws us to Himself of our own free will. In other words, He just makes our life so miserable that we can't live without Him. Right. And so men that are going through this crush right now, consider it all grace. Consider it a blessing. God loves you so much that He's trying to get your attention, to get you focused on the real truth. And so that's what I wanted to write about in this book, is basically just to help these guys embrace and engage in more of a biblical Christianity. Because, look, this other thing that you are doing, guys, it's gutting your manhood. It's gutting your manhood.
Are you seeing positive signs in the younger generation where they seem to be getting the idea that there's a purpose in life, God-designed purpose in life, sooner than us old guys?
No, I'm actually finding the opposite. Notwithstanding that there are a lot of younger people now who really are embracing an orthodox, traditional Christian faith, right. I would say that, I had a 28-year-old young man come to say recently and said, "Would you mentor me?" And I said, so he's 28 years old. He is a believer. On our 4th visit, he walks in, he sits down, and he says, "I have a mediocre business. I have a mediocre marriage, and I have a mediocre relationship with God.
Wow.
And so he had waited to his fourth visit. Why? Because he wanted to know if he could trust me with that information. And I find that young men have all this bottled up inside of them, and they don't have mentors. I want to tell you a little story. It's so poignant, and it's about this older men mentoring younger men idea. In the Kruger National Park in South Africa, the elephants overpopulated the park. So the government, in its wisdom, decided to kill the adult elephants and relocate their offspring to other parks around South Africa. So as the young bull elephants became teenagers, their testosterone levels spiked, and they became very aggressive. In one park, they savagely trampled and killed 37 rhinoceros. So in one park, a ranger had an idea, and they brought in some adult male bulls, and they mentored the younger teenage bulls, and not one single rhinoceros was ever killed in that park again.
Wow.
And I think this is one of the desperate needs. In fact, I talk about it in the book. I said, look, if you don't do anything else, help a younger guy figure out what biblical manhood is all about.
I know you got to go. Let me ask you one more question. On the subtitle, One Huge Promise for Your Life. What is it?
Okay, so here it is. Ready, guys? So if you will embrace and engage the ideas that these 10 mentors are presenting, that I help these principles that are in this book, that you can escape the clutches of this cultural Christianity that I said is gutting manhood today, and get to or back to more of a biblical Christianity. You can become the man that you want to be. It's possible. You can release the power of God in every direction, in every detail of your lives. I'd love to sit down with you and have a conversation in this book, How God Makes Men, and show you some of these principles.
Thank you, my friend. I know you're on a tight schedule. I value every minute of it. We'll get you back. Keep up the good work.
You.
And I do want to get the story of the rifle over your head.
Hey, just one more quick word.
Yeah.
You know, we're hiring 330 area directors, one for every 1,000 churches.
Wow.
To help church more effectively disciple men. We've hired 80 men so far. We're hiring. Man in the Mirror is hiring. And so there may be some men that are listening to this, or you know somebody, some men who might like to investigate a career in men's discipleship, helping churches, and they could go to areadirectors.org and get all the information. That's areadirectors.org. I'd appreciate that.
Oh, you bet. That's a great tip. Thanks, my friend. All right. Okay. Patrick, take it easy. We'll get you back real soon.
Thank you, Perry.
All right, see you later. All right, Patrick Morley with us today. And again, the book is entitled How God Makes Men. 10 epic stories, 10 proven principles, one huge promise for your life. Patrick is he's kind of like a men's leader, and there you can just tell by his heart. He's into mentoring men and working with men leaders and men's groups all over the country. Check out the book, see if Evangel has it there in the mall, or maybe Christian Discount Books in Jacksonville, or you can check it out at Amazon, or maybe even at Barnes & Noble. How God Makes Men. 10 epic stories, 10 proven principles, one huge promise for your life. And he does use some of the Bible characters that are really, really powerful.